The next 2 weeks, Gavin will be up here. We'll take a bit of a break. We'll come back to it end of January, though, so don't worry. It's called The Principle of the Path. And yesterday we kind of just defined what we were talking about and kind of where we were going. We covered a lot of ground. Today we're just going to slow it down a little bit and look at one smaller concept. Last week we talked about how all of our decisions were connected and that all of our paths have destinations and we need to be aware of those destinations. Today I want to talk a bit more about the paths themselves, about choosing our paths. And at the guys' coffee table after setup this morning, we talked about just some accidents that happen on the road and some interesting stories. Well, as we all know, there's a way to drive on a path that's safe, and there's a way to drive on a path that's risky, and those risks will catch up to you. So that's what we want to talk about a little bit today. Now, I remember making a decision quite a number of years ago, a couple years ago at least, about a business I was looking at getting into. And I was going through numbers. I was talking to another person, and I can't remember if he said or I said, whatever, but something we said along the lines, man, I wish I'd had started a business before, because then I'd have the experience I need to start a first business. Well, of course, it's ludicrous, right? Because nobody who's ever started a first business has experience starting another business, right? That's true, it's just not helpful. It would be really nice if you'd have that experience, but if you get thinking about it, nobody should ever have to start a first business. And nobody who's never been married before should ever have to choose a spouse, because what do they know about spouses? And no first-time parent should ever discipline a kid. What do you know about discipline? Right? And on and on and on. How can you choose a college to go to if you don't even have a degree? I mean, come on. But life is really a series of not just decisions, but of first decisions. And all too often, those first decisions are actually the most important. They really are. But we make them sometimes almost blind. Because the reality is, there are a lot of places you know nothing about, but you badly want to go to. I don't just mean traveling-wise, I mean in your relationships, in your spiritual walk with God, in your finance, wherever it is, in every area of your life, there's places you badly want to get to, but you've never been before. And so you're actually the least qualified to figure out how to get there. Sort of. We haven't been left entirely alone on this account. See, with first date and first marriage and first job and first semester away from home, all right, every one of these is a direction heading somewhere. And we've been learning yesterday and today, again more, about how to choose our directions, how the Bible can guide us through these directions, and how we can travel on them more safely. A couple of weeks ago, I was traveling on South Perimeter Highway between St. Mary's and Pembina. They're doing a lot of bridge construction there. And I don't know where it's at now exactly, but a few weeks ago, the right lane was closed. And it's been closed the last, dozen times I've been through there. Manitoba Highways is nothing if not overprotective. So you get like 2.5 miles of warning, right lanes ending, no passing, right lanes ending. You're going 85 in an 80 zone, right lanes ending. And you see this again and again and again and again. And I, being a God-fearing, man-loving human being, go, right lane's ending, I will merge into the left lane at the earliest convenience. There's a bit of a gap and you merge in. See, because to me, merging is going a significant percentage of the speed of traffic and making a lane change. That's merging. Call me crazy. Because somebody every time goes, oh my goodness, the right lane is free. 110. Boom. Until they run smack dab into a barricade and they're going 0. And suddenly, in quotation marks, they're stopped. And now they want to merge, again in quotation marks, at 0 kilometers an hour into 100 kilometers an hour. And it's a big kerfluffle every time. And I keep thinking, didn't you see it coming? There was a lot of signs for like 2.5 miles where you're not suspicious that the lane was mysteriously clear during busy time. Not just hammer down. Hope they're on their cell phone or something. At least there might be an excuse then. Back in 2009, I went to Italy. And for about a week of that time, a little over a week, we rented a car. And, of course, I've never driven in Italy before, but the rules are very similar. I did a little research into it. One important difference, though. Speed limits mean nothing. Now, I don't just mean nothing as in, like, everyone speeds. I mean, they actually just are random numbers picked by, like, somebody in the Department of Transport of Italy. And so, open 4-lane highway might be listed literally 40 kilometers an hour. Listed. Everyone's going 120, right? And then you might be going to a gradual curve, and it's listed 80. You're like, oh, it's 40 before, now it's 80. That might be like a 25-kilometer-an-hour hairpin corner with like a 200-foot cliff at the end. No railing. You don't know. So literally every corner, you just slow down because you don't know what's going to happen. Right? You just can't trust the speed limit. What you can trust is when all of the locals with Italian license plate all hammer on their brakes, you just hammer on your brakes. You got no clue why. Road looks open, weather's fine, 4-lane highway. You hammer on your brakes, and all of a sudden there's like an 8-inch speed bump in the middle of a highway. Wasn't on my GPS. Everyone else stopped. Doesn't that raise your suspicions? See, this is kind of tacking into this principle of the path, that there are signs we can follow. There are people we can follow. We haven't been left alone. God has given us his book filled with promises and warnings and examples. And then he encourages us in there to get connected to a church body and specifically to small groups and partner with people in our lives who maybe have done some of the things we want to do, who can guide us. And still, I talk to people all the time who tell me about the problems they're in. And I'm not Jonah. I don't cry as soon as somebody tells me the problems they're in. I maybe have a different heart, maybe a different skill set. I don't know. I end up thinking some of the time, not all the time, but some of the time, didn't you see this coming? Like for like 2.5 miles, there were warning signs, and now you hit this barricade, and I feel very sorry for you, but didn't you see this coming? And I'm sorry if you feel like maybe that's what I was thinking when I was across from you one time, but the reality is, that's a question I ask sometime. I think we've all asked this at some point in time. Didn't you see this coming? There were big warning signs, but now here you are, and your finances are a wreck, or your marriage is on the rocks, or you're divorced, or you're in receivership, or you flunked out of that course, or whatever, and were there not warning signs? Sometimes there's not, and I am not trying to judge anybody right now. What I'm saying is, we need to ask ourselves if there were warning signs. Because 9 out of 10 times when I asked that question, there were. Somebody spoke something into this person's life and said, that there's a red flag there. Or they read something. Maybe something even in the Bible. And the Spirit kind of quickened inside of them and they wondered. Or a teacher's pulled them aside and said, you're failing the course, and they still didn't study. Or whatever it is. There was a warning sign. There was something there. And I don't want to harp on our past failures. I want to look forward. But looking forward requires, at least to a certain extent, looking back at what did not work. And looking forward at might work for us. And this leads us right into the central verse I want to harp on today. And actually, we're last week we took apart like a whole chapter. Today we're just going to actually look at one verse and pull it apart. Proverbs 27, verse 12. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. This is in the Bible. This is good stuff. It's right there. The prudent see danger and take refuge. The simple keep going and suffer for it. So we're introduced to two people, the prudent and the simple. And prudent is translated various different ways as prudent, wise, careful, whatever. I like the word wise. Right? But they see life as connected. Right? We talked about it. They realize that it's your direction, not your intention, that determines your destination. You end up where you end up by a series of connected paths you take, not by hopes and dreams you carry inside of yourself. So they see danger later, and they take refuge now. They see the roads closed later, so they emerge now. That's the way that works. They act as if, in fact, later is now. And so somebody who just kind of looked at the car, or your life, let's say, but the car, and didn't see all the signs around would go, why is that guy going out of a free lane into a busy lane? That makes no sense. But the prudent see something later and act now before it's too late. They take refuge now. That's one of the key differences, because the simple are kind of blind to that fact. The simple act like later is later. They might talk about it or be worried about it or be concerned about it, but what they don't grasp is every 86,400 seconds, tomorrow becomes today, later is now. Eventually, later is now. So that danger that you see eventually is the danger of today and the problems of today. And so the prudent make the difficult choices today. They pay their choices today instead of paying the consequences later. We've been warned about this. This isn't something that can catch us broadside, but when the prudent see that they've been skipping the gym or hanging around with some very toxic friends that they didn't hang around with so much before, or they suddenly realize, hey, I'm kind of a different guy at work than I am at home. and I don't really like the guy I am at work, they take action. They go, oh, I see danger up ahead. I need to fix that today. Not tomorrow, today. If you want to, now's New Year's, and it's the time of New Year's resolutions for some people, and a lot of it has to do with health and fitness. It's the most common New Year's resolution. It's very simple, actually. If you want to be healthy, you ask yourself this question. If I was healthy later, what would I be doing? What would I be eating? Where would I be? Well, go do that now. You've just identified what your later could look like, so you've just exactly identified what your now should look like. What you want your later to look like is what you do now. Because later is now if you're prudent. Otherwise, later will always be later, and you'll be stuck with paying the consequences for it. But the verse goes on. It says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. What do they suffer for? Well, they suffer for being oblivious to the obvious. What other people could see around them and were talking to them about, they were oblivious to. And what they didn't realize was that eventually the inevitable would become the unavoidable, and they'd be there. Their later would become their now, and then whatever was inevitable just becomes unavoidable. And suddenly, they're in a place of suffering. And there's a lot of ways suffering can look. But maybe you've burnt that bridge with that friend, and it's not really irreparable. It's burnt. Or maybe you've crossed that point, and now there's an STD. Or maybe you're pregnant. Or maybe you're divorced. Or maybe you've stopped going to church. Or whatever it is. There's a lot of different things. But eventually, at some point in time, if you spend your money poorly, you're going to be in debt beyond what you can handle. At some point in time, if you keep making those choices, there's a consequences. Your path has a destination, good or bad. And the reality is, you don't accidentally end up somewhere good. That rarely happens. That's the exception to the rule. They're called accidents because you did them by accident, and they always involve collisions, it seems like, with cars. They were accidents. I don't just kind of start driving and then I accidentally end up exactly where I want to go. That takes deliberate choice, making your right corners at your right time. That's why the Bible spends a lot of time warning us. There's one kind of key verse we're looking at, but if you read your Bible, story after story after story, these people fell, but they were warned, or these people rose. It's like Joseph, in Egypt, and the Pharaoh, he's warned, there's going to be drought, there's going to be drought. Now, he takes action and is saved. But a few hundred years later, another Pharaoh is warned, I'm freeing my people, the Israelites are leaving, and he does nothing, and he dies. It's the same mentality, but one person rose to the challenge, and one person was blind to the challenge, and it was a completely different outcome. Completely different outcome. Have you ever played a game of chance? I hate games of chance. I just can't stand them. Like snakes and ladders, or chutes and ladders, depending on what kind of version you have. You just roll your dice, and you just move. And you either hit a ladder and go up, or you hit a snake or a chute and go down. That's it. It's the entire game right there. There's no strategy, because there's no point to a strategy. You roll your dice. It drives me crazy. 2-year-old might beat you one day, and then it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, life's not like that. There are surprises. Absolutely there are surprises, right? There are blind corners. But we know they're blind. We could see there were blind corners from a while because we couldn't see what was around them. That's a blind corner. That's how we know it's coming. God made this world a world of principle and of consequence. So there's gravity. We know about gravity. It's not a surprise. We don't fall down and go, oh my goodness, I didn't think I'd fall. Well, you tipped, so you fell. That's just how it goes. Consequences happen. But we can use them. We can leverage them. We talked about this last time. We can leverage this principle that later is now. If you've ever seen a National Geographic or whatever, building scaffold systems for 8 and 10-story building construction in rural China. I've seen a few of these pictures and stuff like that. It's really cool because it's all out of bamboo. And they literally tie bamboo shafts together, and they build these 10-story high scaffolds. It's really impressive. Here's the interesting thing. There's some guy, and he's working on the edge, and they want to scaffold it this way. So he takes his bamboo, and he sticks it way out there, and he ties his knot, and then another one, ties his knot, and then another one up. And then he steps out onto it, and he builds his next section. And then he steps onto that, and he actually is building his platform as he goes along. What kind of health and safety is there? Very good health and safety. Because the guy who's building it's the guy who takes the first step on it. You're either building it well or you got a very short career, I'm thinking. At 10 stories up. So you kind of weed out the problems really early, and then you just got good scaffold after that. I don't know how the system exactly works. See, many of us think of our life as a continuum. I thought of this till last night, really, it struck me. I think of my life as a line with a beginning and an end, and I'm somewhere in there walking down the line. If I was a car, there'd be a highway, be open front and in back, and stuff, the future is coming at me. But the future's not really coming at you. That's kind of actually a misidea. It's not, because your now makes your later. Your decisions now changes and affects and alters your later. And so it's not really a fixed road you drive on. It's actually more like a scaffold you're building, and your tomorrow is built off of standing off of today. And tomorrow you're going to stand on that day and build your next day. And so on and so on and so forth. And so you actually build your scaffold ahead of you as you go. So think about it this way. Tomorrow, you're going to have to stand on today. Are you comfortable with that? Are you happy with what you're doing today, building today, such that you can stand on tomorrow comfortably in your relationships? Are you building your relationships, for instance, today, such that you can comfortably stand on them tomorrow and keep on building? Or financially, are you investing and saving and being careful, whatever, today, such that you can step off on it tomorrow? Because your tomorrows are only going to be as good as your weakest link of a today. And eventually, the simple keep going and suffer for it because they run out of tomorrows, they run out of scaffold, and then there's just like 10 stories, and that just really sucks because gravity is a principle we cannot avoid. But God warns us about this, and He teaches us how to handle it so that we can leverage this. See, if you've ever carried a balance on a credit card or borrowed money you weren't sure how to pay, you get the concept of interest at least somewhat. And so you know that if you borrow $1,000 from a bank today, eventually you have to pay back, let's just say, $1,200 later. And that $200 is kind of gone. It just disappears. You got $1,000 worth of stuff, but you paid $1,200 back for that $1,000. It's like you bought $1,000 with a $200 bill. It's just gone. But the reverse also works. You put $1,000 into a savings account, and after a couple of years, compound interest, you got $1,200. Actually, if you have $1,200, let me know what bank you're using, because I got like 1,005. Because interest rates are like right to the bottom. But anyway, the point is you accrue interest over time one way or the other. And either you have to pay back extra or you get extra. That's how that works. This works in relationships as well. These principles of the path are true in driving, and they're true in money, and they're true in our relationships with man and with God. So when I borrow money, let's say relationally, from my wife, I end up paying back more than I borrowed. If I go in the hole, sometimes I hear spouses complain about this. I know I myself have complained about this. Well, I was just a little sharp, and 6 days later, I'm still paying it back. Well, maybe, but you knew about it. This principle wasn't a blind principle. You knew about it, and you hadn't really been investing in that relationship. So then when you overdraw suddenly, after 2.5 miles of warning, you're stuck. And yeah, it seems unfair at the moment, but the reality was it's actually very fair. We know about it. This is a principle of our life that we live with. So, it's come full circle here, that business that I talked about one day thinking about what I actually did get involved in it. All right? And so, right into the Great Recession, and it was, it was a hard time. So it was a stressful time for me. And so I would drive home, and I'd be thinking and scheming and planning and strategizing for the next day. And then I'd come in the door, and no, I wasn't mean, but I was distracted and off of my own land and probably a little cold and distant from Dest, right? I would just walk in the door, and I wasn't home yet. I was still in my work headspace. And that's how it would go for maybe like an hour, right? And Dest would pick up on this very quickly. Apparently women are very good at that. And then I'd have supper. And somewhere over supper, I would put it all to bed, and I'd let it rest, right? But oddly enough, Dest didn't. It still bothered her. And then suddenly I was paying negative interest on something I hadn't even realized I had borrowed. And suddenly we were alone in the evening, and it wasn't all just happy and peaceful and loving. And I'm going, well, how'd this happen? Well, I know how it happened. I was acting like my life was a series of disconnected events. But as we talked about last week, all of our decisions are landmarks on a path, and paths lead somewhere. And my path that I was choosing, my decisions that I was choosing, led me not to relational bliss, but to a distance I didn't like. These were the choices I made. In fact, in Proverbs 28:10, I believe, 28:20 rather, it says this: "A faithful person will be richly blessed, but one eager to get rich will not go unpunished." Now, this is talking about money, technically. But this is exactly the same principle that applies in relationships, right? If you faithfully invest in your wife over time, you are richly blessed. If you withdraw and then try to get rich quickly, relationally speaking, you will not go unpunished, I can guarantee you. Faithfully investing over time, not a get-rich-quick scheme suddenly after supper when you realize what you've done. That's not the way this works. So eventually, this started to get through to my skull. I eventually started to think about this. And so here's what I did. This is just so simple, it boggled my mind. I would park the truck a block from home. I'd just sit. And at first, maybe it was like 5 minutes. Eventually, this was like under a minute. Like, we're talking 45 seconds. I would just park the truck. And I would just think to myself, okay, this stays here. All this work stuff, it stays here. When I walk in the door, I want to act now like I want Des to act to me later. That's it. That's all I would do. Nothing special. I honestly, I didn't have any big fancy prayer or whatever. I would just park and say, this stays here because I want to act to Des now like I want her to act to me later. And I would walk in the door. That was it. That might be close to the single biggest positive decision I have made in my relationship with my wife. 35, 45 seconds. That was it. It was the most high leverage activity I could have done because I tapped into the fact that later is now. Whether you want it to be or not, later is now. Now, I still had hard days and I still came home frustrated. And I would walk in there and say, Des, I had a hard day. Such and such happened. And she would comfort me because I wasn't coming in accidentally dragging it with me. Sometimes I brought it to her, but it was deliberate because my decisions are a landmark on a path to somewhere. And at the very least, we should be deliberate with the paths we choose. We can leverage that later is now. Or we can be standing on our scaffolding and really hoping our knots yesterday were good enough. So where are you living? Because we're all living somewhere, like our later and our now are disconnected. We all have somewhere where we're being caught off guard constantly. Where's it for you? Is it in your relationship with your spouse or a friend? With your career choices? Here's a big one in our busy world. It's with our quiet and private time and study time with God. We stand and we want to grow with God. God, what are your plans for me? What are your dreams for me? And we don't spend personal devotional time. We don't read the Bible. We don't spend time praying. We don't spend quiet time where we just quiet our mind and spend time with God. And when we do, we want answers quick. You see, we want to get rich quick. We don't want to be a faithful person. That happens a lot. It happens in all areas of our lives. Where's your area? Where's your trigger spot? I'm going to invite the band to come up, and they'll play a song in a few seconds. But just while they do, I want to spark your memory. Are there warning signs? Are there red flags? Are there people in your life trying to get your attention? Are there people saying things you don't like to hear? And if they are, is there any truth to it? Because if there's not, don't worry about it. Let it go. But are you that person in the right lane thinking free and clear, free and clear, free and clear, speeding along, but there's a barricade up ahead? Because there's always warning signs. God loves you. He puts warning signs along the way. He puts people in your path. We don't always see it. Or worse yet, are you not really even plugged in with people? Maybe you're not in a small group. You kind of peripheral at church. You don't have a lot of close friends. And if you do, you just kind of talk surface level stuff. See, because that's dangerous. Because now you're speeding into a blind corner. And some of those blind corners are gradual curves, and yet you take them. But eventually you're going to hit something you can't handle at that speed. And if nobody's around you, surrounding you, working in your life, you're going to get caught off guard. Eventually you're going to hit the ditch. Man, I remember there was a guy not far from our house. Like, there was kind of a blind corner there. And this guy was like 60 feet out into the field, like way out there. I couldn't pull him out even. And I was like, what happened here? Well, it's a blind corner. I didn't realize there was, I guess there was a deer on the road or whatever. He took the blind corner. There was a deer on the road. You had to swerve. You had to field or whatever. So it was a blind corner. I couldn't see what was around it. Now, I was nice to the guy because he had some damage to his truck and I felt bad for him. But I was thinking, I understand it was a blind corner. I understand there was a deer. That sucks. But you must have been going like 110 on a gravel road around a blind corner. Or you wouldn't be so far in the field. What happened? Did you not see the road signs? Well, we do this in our life all the time. We forget. We forget that the principle of the path is real. So here's the question I want to leave you with. This is the question. In light of my past experience and my future hopes, what's the best decision now? In light of what I've learned before and what I want later, what should my now be like? And then go do it. Pick one area, because this can get overwhelming if we try this in every area. So this is my challenge. I'm going to leave it with you now. Pick one area in your life this week. Ask yourself, in light of my past experience and my future hopes, what's my best decision now? And then just go do it. See how it works. I guarantee you it'll pay dividends because it taps into one of the truly great principles of the Bible, later is now. That we can be prudent about these things. Just want to bow with me here. I'd like to pray with you guys for a second. Heavenly Father, thank you that you love us enough, that you've prepared and crafted and thought and bled over this book, the Bible, that it's filled with warnings and promises on how to live our life and how to navigate our life. I thank you as well that you've made this world a world of principles that we can follow and leverage to our benefit, that you haven't left us blindly guessing at the whims of nature. Heavenly Father, I thank you that you inspired Solomon so many thousands of years ago to pen these words filled with wisdom to penetrate into our hearts today in 2014. Lord, I ask that you'd move in our hearts today, this week, as we ponder what our future hopes really are, what our past experiences really teaching us, and inspire us to dream big about what we can do now. And Lord, as we take these steps in that direction, as we choose a now for a preferred future, Lord, I ask that you'd one-up us, that you would bring us a vision of something we haven't even imagined for our future. A future free of addiction. Lord, a future filled with the conquering of toxic friendships that are dragging us down, Lord. A future we can live at work the way we live at home, the way we live in church, where we are one person serving you at all times, God. That would be the future hope that we would have as we choose our now. Lord, and most of all, I pray that you would surround us with people who would love us and care us enough to hold us accountable to our decisions so that we can follow through with them to the very end. Lord, I pray all this in your name. Amen.